farmer, rancher, mayor way. Let me explain both. The pirate ship way, you might imagine, comes in with force and basically wreaks complete havoc behind it. Now, if you're on a pirate ship, you know that you might get a whole bunch of gold, or as they called it in the pirate days, booty. You also would know that maybe the next year when you came into town, you probably wouldn't be welcome. But then there's the farmer, rancher, mayor way. Let me explain how this works. You come into town, and through transparency and authenticity, you become a member of the community. You might purchase a small parcel of land, and with that land, you grow produce that you sell for a nice profit in the local square where people are more than happy to pay your prices because your stuff is just that good. And with the profit, you actually buy another piece of land, and then eventually another piece of land. And now you're no longer a farmer, you're a rancher, and you've got cattle, and you've got chickens, and you've got a growing estate in this town, until the point at which you become such a leader in the town that they elect you mayor. Now, farmer, rancher, mayor takes longer than the pirate ship method, but it certainly leads to greater profit overall. It also leads to greater impact overall. Now, it's your choice. If you want to follow, like, for example, there's some internet marketing gurus out there that teach you the pirate ship method. Get as much as you can now, or you can build a business that stands the test of time, something you could be proud of 20 or 30 years from now. On today's show, we're going to talk about one of the biggest keys to building a business that stands the test of time, and that's a function of transparency and authenticity. EdTalks Live is next. Hey, what's up, party people? My name's Ed Rush, 5-time #1 best-selling author, your host for the most positive place on the planet for insanely implementable ideas. Today's show is called How to Deliver with 100% Authenticity. We've got my very special friend, Zack Brittle, who's coming on to the show. I don't normally do this. I printed out Zack's introduction because he wrote it himself, and I actually think it's kind of funny. All right, so I'm going to introduce Zack in just a second. Before I do that, do me a favor, jump into chat on the right-hand side. Tell us who you are, where you're from, what you do. Be a part of the EdTalks Live community. By the way, I got a big show planned for you on Thursday. Thursday shows how to become a master persuader. But today, we're talking about how to deliver with 100% authenticity and transparency. Let me say hello to some of our friends. By the way, Barry was here at 9:38 this morning, 22 minutes before the show. What's up, man? First day of fall. It's true, isn't it? Today's the 22nd. We're recording this. Wendell Buggs from Houston. Good to see you. Diana as well. Getting to the garden feeds your soul. I love it. Good morning, Mike Toy. Robert says, "Oh, well, I wish you the best. Well, we're gonna give you the best 30 minutes that you could possibly get." And Jim, welcome back as well. Hello, Anita. Greetings from Alabama. They started to play football down there again. So some places they're playing football and some places aren't playing football. Let me just put it that way. All right, so let me introduce, I'm going to bring in my guest, and I'll get back into chat in just a moment to say hello to you. This is the introduction that Zack wrote for his show today. I said, hey, by the way, if you should know this, Zack and I go back to 1991, 1992. Yep. So that we're talking like almost 30 years, dude. Almost 30 years that we've known each other. So here's what Zack wrote about himself. I don't know, Zack.
This is going to be great for authenticity right here.
Zack is my absolute favorite friend from college. He edited some of my best history essays. I didn't even take history, by the way. Taught me how to recognize the sliding curveball and helped me to learn how to talk to girls. That's it. No, sorry, there's more. The rest of this is actually true. Since then, he's become a rock star couples therapist. He's been counseling and coaching couples for over 12 years. He's a licensed mental health counselor and certified Gottman therapist. He's also the #1 best-selling author of the Relationship Journal and the Marriage Therapy Journal, which, by the way, that's how we reconnected. I think it was like 5 or 6 years ago. When we reconnected, it was to talk about your book, to help you launch Relationship Alphabet, which you totally blew off the charts on Amazon. He also has a podcast on Vanity Fair called the Marriage Therapy Radio, which somehow I'm going to end up being a guest on and talking about marriage, which is like not even close to my area of expertise. But I'm just going to say it like it is. Yeah. So what's up, dude? Welcome to the show, man. Good to see you.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks for having me. This is fun.
I've
never been on YouTube before or YouTube Live before.
So you've never been on YouTube, but I saw you sent me a link to your podcast, which apparently Vanity Fair puts on YouTube, and you're getting like 10,000.
Yeah, no, what you saw was, so I have a podcast. It's called Marriage Therapy Radio. And then my partner and I, Laura, we have a relationship with Vanity Fair, and they've been having us analyze like pop culture through the relationship lenses.
Yeah.
So yeah, they do all the work. They get all the views. We don't get all the views, but they, we recorded 6 total, and they've put 4 of them up on the interweb. So that's been,
you get all the views. So, so give me an example of that. So what kind of pop culture would you filter through, like a movie or?
Well, we did like a deep dive into Ross and Rachel from Friends. We watched their relationship sort of unfold over 10 seasons and talked a little bit about the themes and patterns that were present there. We actually did Guardians of the Galaxy with Gamora and Peter Quill, Chris Pratt.
Yeah, that's right. Chris Pratt. Yeah.
Chris Pratt. Yeah. There's like so many Chris's in Hollywood right now.
Yeah.
And that one hasn't come out yet. I'm looking forward to seeing what they put together. That was tough to try and figure out how to do relationship advice for superheroes, you know?
Well, but you have in the Guardians of the Galaxy character, by the way, if you haven't seen that movie, now's a really good time to do that. It's on Disney Plus for free. But in that particular relationship, by the way, we're going to get to the topic in a second, but I thought this would be interesting that you have a guy who is, it's interesting, Zack. So Zack and I were talking on the phone before this show, and I was telling him some things about when we knew each other in college. And I said, if I wasn't so damn prideful, I probably could have learned a few things from you. And that probably describes that character in that movie really well. A guy who is wildly insecure, but covers it over with a lot of hubris and pride and a lot of action. And I think it's an interesting analogy too, because he's in that movie, he turns out to be like essentially half God, half man, which is like a perfect description of us too, right?
That you and I like that I'm God and you're man, and we're half God.
Yeah, that's exactly what I thought. I was kind of going like human race kind of thing, but yeah. What are your thoughts?
Totally. Wait, say more about the stuff you could have learned from me in college. I want to hear more about that.
I can't believe you're getting. Dude, that was the part. That was the me and you part before the show. I told Zack, I'm going to tell you this. I'm going to just tell you the truth and nothing but the truth. So help me. And I will edit this out of this video as soon as I can after this. What I told Zack was we were good friends in college. And what I told him was I didn't realize until much later how weird and awkward I was around girls, frankly. I didn't grow up in a home life where there was that relationship was there. And I was telling him, my dad, who I love, essentially my dad's advice about women was they're going to get in the way of your athletic endeavors. That was really the message. And so I said, I probably could have learned a couple things from you, just about not like scoring. I'm just talking about like how to communicate effectively with the opposite sex, which I was very weird about. So there.
What I didn't say earlier on the phone call was, I think we learned quite a bit from one another. You'll remember, and we can tell everybody, we had a standing date on, I think it was Thursday.
Fries. Yeah.
What's that? Cheese fries and lemonade. Because we were both really good, Christian boys at the time. No beer for us at that moment. But we sat down. We'd sit there for hours and just talk back and forth about things that mattered, which I think is why we can do it now.
It's an interesting, and you're just who you are at that point in time.
Yeah.
By the way, welcome to everybody who just joined us. I saw a whole bunch of folks just join us on the show. So let me tell you what we're doing. This is a talk amongst friends. I'm with my buddy Zack Brittle, who has an H at the end of his name, by the way. This is a show about how to deliver with 100% authenticity. We're gonna talk about that in the business world, but we're also going to talk about that in the relationship world. Zack's a longtime marriage and family therapist, but he's also #1 best-selling author. He's one of those guys has done a very good job building a business, but also becoming a teacher out in the real world and an expert. And he was very humble about what he said, but he does have a podcast that airs, and he gets about 10,000 plus views every time he puts his podcast out, which is pretty legitimate. So he kind of just moved past that very quickly, but he knows what he's doing, and he's very well recognized in the marketplace. So let's talk about authenticity. I mean, you've done this very, very well at being a very transparent person. When you meet Zack Brittle, online or offline, you're meeting the real guy. Mm-hmm. Is there some secret to that, or has that always been natural to you? And how does a business owner? I
honestly, I think it comes naturally. I don't know how to do it differently. There's a line in my bio, the one that you have there, I think, that says that my wife, Rebecca, and I have been happily married for 21 out of 23 years, which indicates that I'm like, I don't have it all together. I mean, I'm an expert, and I feel like an expert. I know a lot of stuff. But part of my expertise comes from just struggling and going through it and trying to make it work and failing a lot. And I don't have like the drama gene. Like I'm watching you kind of do the, hey, everybody, and there's a pirate ship and there's a thing. And I don't have that gene. I can't do that. I can't like, so not that it's inauthentic, but it's just like, I don't put on my therapist costume and go do therapy. I just come and sit down and talk to people. And I think that's where value gets added for me.
So when you're communicating, for example, on the show that you have that's on Vanity Fair, or when you're speaking, when you walk out there, how different is the guy that's out there compared to the one that you see at like dinner the night before? Very
little difference. I mean, because I don't, particularly when I'm speaking to in live events, I almost always start with, hey, if at the end of this event, you feel like, yes, that was amazing, what do we accomplish? And I'll put it all on a whiteboard early so that we can say, this is what you want to hear. It's not what I want to tell you. I want to make sure that you get to go home and you get in your car. And when you look at your husband or your wife, you go, I'm really glad we heard about that, because that's really important, not just whatever I have to say. So, I mean, it's very similar to the guy you get at dinner. Because again, I don't have the drama gene. I wish I did. My daughter does. My daughter's a professional actress, 17-year-old, and she knows how to play any character, anytime, at the drop of a hat. You're like, hey, become sad, and she'll start crying, or become a gymnast, and she'll figure out some, little monologue that she's tapped into from whatever. But yeah, no, I just don't have it. And I'm glad I don't have it, because I'm glad that I get to just tell the truth all the time.
It's interesting. So is there do you have like a go-to story that you tell when you begin communicating, like especially on stage, or if you're on your show, or how does an audience connect with you, like the person?
Yeah. So when I start working with couples in my practice, the first thing I say is, how can I be of help? And then I shut up and I wait till they stop talking. And sometimes that takes.
So wait, the first question when people come in,
mm-hmm.
You don't do like a preamble or like, here's how the sessions work. You literally say, how can I be of help?
How can I be of help? And then I just.
How long is the average answer? I mean, they both get to talk, right? So
yeah, it's probably 25 minutes. If it's not 2 minutes or 45 minutes, it's about 20 minutes. So sometimes they're just, yeah.
Okay, so let me ask an insider question, just because I've always wanted to know this. Let's assume it's a male. Let's assume it's a male-female marriage.
Okay.
Who talks first when you ask that question?
She does.
She does, right? Yeah. Okay. And of the 25 minutes, how much is her participation in that?
Well, I'm pretty.
I'm not making any assumptions here. I'm just asking the question, just so you know. So,
well, two things. One is I'm very good about not choosing sides, so I want to make sure.
Well, that you can't, right?
Yeah. And second, she probably has about 65% of the floor, and then I make sure that he gets at least the other 35.
So what do you do? All right. So let me ask you this question. If you were to ask, we're getting someplace with this, by the way. If you were to ask the average individual in the couple, how much of the stress or difficulty in your marriage is because of you or is your fault? What percentage would you hear from most people?
They will tell me it's 50.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
They're not telling the truth because they think it's a lot smaller, but they'll say out loud because they're supposed to, it's 50.
Okay, so you're saying the average guy walks in and he'll say 50%, but what he really thinks is zero. It's basically all her, and she thinks the other, because by the way that they communicate, you know that they're basically blaming the other person for their problems, right?
Yeah, I mean there's a couple of things, right? Like they are trying to make sense of it, and they want me to make sure that they're not the bad guy. They want me to assure that they're not the bad guy. And so I will often say, here's a really great example, actually. Let's say that there's been an affair. Let's say the couple comes in because the affair has been discovered. And let's say it's her. She did it. She cheated, right? And he's really mad about it. So she'll kind of tell me the story, or she'll take the blame, or she'll understand that she did something wrong. But eventually I'll look at him and I'll say, I want you to know, never, ever in the history of me working with a couple with an affair has I ever seen it recover if the harmed partner, him, doesn't say, I am a part of this too. I definitely have a part of this.
Oh, wow.
Because I want them to take responsibility for the thing that broke. So I don't know if I answered your question exactly, but here's what I was getting at. When you asked me about a go-to story, I always begin with, how can I be of help? Here's how the first session usually ends, especially if they have kids. So I know you have kids, Ed, so I'm going to say, I just met your daughter. She's 2. And how old are your boys?
They are 13, 11. So I have a daughter's 15, a boy's 13, boy's 11, and a 2-year-old.
Let's take your older kids. So 11, 13, 15. I'll say, Ed, in about 10 years, your kids are going to be on some therapist's couch, and the therapist is going to say, tell me about your parents. What was their relationship like? What was it like growing up in their home? What did they teach you about a marriage? And then your kids, they're going to say words. Words are going to come out of their mouth. And you now have a choice in terms of how you direct those words, because they could say, yeah, before that COVID thing, they were kind of like this. It was sort of tense or yucky in our house or whatever. Afterwards, they were kind, and we laughed a lot. They still argued, but they were really good at repair. And so what I want to do is help them get a vision for the end, like help those couples get a vision for like what happens after therapy or as a result of therapy, and what words are the kids going to say that they can really be proud of, right? That they can really be, happy about. Because most people right now, when I ask adults about their parents, the stories they tell me, their parents aren't flat. They wouldn't be flattering. They're not. I mean, they're challenging. And so I just want to normalize that and say, it's gonna happen. Somebody's gonna ask you about your parents, and they're gonna be talking about you. And so who are you going to be?
I think that's pretty cool. By the way, if you haven't jumped into chat, please jump in and say hello. You can do that on the right-hand side on YouTube. If you're on Facebook, below. And this show, I should take a break real quick and just say, my name is Ed Rush. I'm here with my friend, Zack Brittle. We're talking about how to deliver with authenticity. We're on a little bit of a side road. We're going to get to this again, because really what we're talking about is how to open up to be able to communicate the way that you want to communicate. And we're using marriage therapy actually as an example, which is, I think, super fascinating. I was laughing, by the way, because one of my running jokes around the house. So, for example, my 2-year-old would be like running across the grass, and as 2-year-olds do, full speed, full trip into the air, like face plant, legs come flying up, and I think it's hysterical. And she'll start crying, and I will be laughing. As I pick her up, she'll be crying, and I'll be laughing because it's just really funny. And then I'll look at my wife and go, she's going to be like on some counselor's chair when she's 30, telling the person, my dad always laughed when that's my running joke, is all of the things that contribute to the counseling that will happen.
Yeah.
Because truly, we live in a fallen world, and counseling is like inevitable. It's just a matter of where it comes in from. But what you do with a couple, and I want to just kind of anchor on this for a moment, by taking them into the future. Truly, that is one of the most powerful persuasion techniques that you can use. It's called in neurolinguistic programming, it's called future pacing. It's putting someone into the future and having them envision the future so that you can bring them back into the past or into the present to create the kind of change they want in the future. And so, interestingly enough, NLP, neuro linguistics programming, was designed and created for therapists to use on the people that they were helping to train. Then like the salespeople got it really quickly after that, and now it got a lot more popular among salespeople for obvious reasons. But interestingly, the connection between those two, because you have in the way that you future pace, you have the ability to take people out of their moment and bring them into a future that they truly want to create. That's a lot better. And as a communicator, as you're watching this show, what Zack does with his clients is the same thing you want to do with your prospects. If you'll remember back in June when I was talking about this event called Big Pivot that I did back in June, the theme of the event is, I know it's really hard right now, but I want you to look 5 years into the future. And now I want you to look back at yourself now and ask yourself, what decisions have you made now that are putting income, impact, and lifestyle changes into your 5 year ago future? And I think that's really brilliant how you do that with those folks. That's really good. So
the other thing I do is I will generally taunt is the wrong word, but I'll say, I just want you to know therapy doesn't work. I'm like, therapy doesn't work. And they're like, what? And I'm like, it's just a resource. Like, it's a resource just like a podcast or a book or a workshop that you go to. I said, therapy, this couples work. They're like, how long is it going to take? I go, if you take what I'm telling you right now and go like become addicted to the new story, then you can have one session. If you don't go home and like actually make some practical changes, you can have session a week and not see any progress at all. I'm just, Ed, this is my favorite thing to say too. Almost 100% of the time, couples will come in and say, I want tools. We're just looking for some tools
to better communicate, or, not
conflict. Yeah. I'm like, that's great. I said, that's great. Cause I'm Home Depot. Like I know all the tools, but if you go into Home Depot and say, hey, can I get some tools? The guy's going to be like,
what's the project?
What are you building?
Yeah.
And what tools do you already have? And what tools do you need sharpening? And what tools would it be irresponsible for me to sell to you because you're going to hurt yourself, So I'm fortunate to have been able to talk to so many couples and see them try to use different tools through different personas and personalities that I do feel like Home Depot. Although I'll say authentically, my wife will remind me that I need to use those tools at my house as much as I need to let other people. She's fond of saying the cobbler's kids have no shoes.
Oh yeah. Well, I had the blessing of my life of mentoring several pastors, Christian church pastors, and I always found their life is like, I truly love being engaged spiritually. I love to pray. I love to read ancient scriptures. I love the engagement of meditation and connecting with God. But for those guys, that's their business. Their business is being a Christian person. And sometimes it's really hard to do your business and to still have that really vibrant relationship. And I just wonder, how is that for you? I mean, you're supposed to be really good at this, right? You're like dealing with people's conflict all day, but then you go home and sometimes that's sometimes you just want to like put your feet up on the couch and just have a beer and like, I don't want to talk about it right now,
Totally.
So how does that work for you?
Well, we've had to go through it a little bit because, particularly as my profile was rising and I was, kind of had this chip on my shoulder, she sometimes felt like I was a fraud, right? Like I came home and I was like playing husband instead of like, And so I've had to learn how to be sensitive to that for her and to recognize that I have permission to be kind of not all together at my house because one of the things that I think our kids will say when they're on the therapist couch is, I think they'll say lots of horrible things about us, but one of the things they'll say is they were really good at repair. They were really good at correcting. Correcting, which I think, Ed, is the story about you and your daughter, right? Like what you ultimately get to say to your kid is, remember all those times I was laughing at you? that's because you bring me so much joy. It's not because I'm embarrassed, because you're embarrassing. It's good. Because, you know what I mean? And that's going to stick with her, because she's going to know that you had a reason to be, for laughter, right? Like, what did you say about your show? It's the happiest place on the planet or something like that?
That would be Disneyland. I said most positive place on the planet for insanely implementable ideas. And by the way, it's interesting how even that came about. I said that one time on one show, like the third show. And then by the fifth show, people started emailing me and saying, man, I'm really enjoying the most positive place on the planet for insanely. People started telling me back that little, so I said, I'm just going to keep using it. The thing you said about, this is really, I think, a very powerful moment. And I just want to anchor in on this for a moment, because you talked about the transparency to be able to be the expert and help people in their marriages, but also go home and be in the midst of the struggle, you know? And I find that a lot of entrepreneurs have a similar issue, and it connects with this idea of authenticity, because you are somebody who teaches what you do. As you're watching this show, you're somebody who's truly an expert at the thing that you do. But even no matter how great you are, sometimes you have bad days, and sometimes you have bad weeks, and sometimes you have bad months or years, because we live in a fallen world, and you know what? Life is kind of hard. Yeah. And there is a nice steady balance in between communicating that struggle. So for example, one of the things, my wife has told me this probably 25 times in the last 5 months, because the last 5 months have been hard for everyone. And I can tell you, there have been times where I literally got done work and went directly upstairs and laid down, and I didn't get back up again, because I was just like, gosh, man, everything, it just hits you everywhere. But then get up in the morning and be positive enough on a show to lift people up. And I've been transparent about some of those struggles, but at the same time, trying to help communicate effectively enough to bring people through that struggle into a place truly of positivity. And I always tell people, be authentic and be transparent and tell people about the struggle, but don't stop there. Mm-hmm. If you stop there, what ends up happening, this is just a communication and persuasion point. When you stop there, you get yourself stuck and everyone else stuck around you. And the fact is, like, our country is in that spot right now. Everybody's talking about how bad things are, but nobody, I had a boss in the Marine Corps who wrote a sign and put it on his door, and the sign said, "Don't come to me with a problem unless you have a solution to your problem." And this guy, I'm telling you, this guy was like a caveman, one of the dumbest dudes I knew. And I was like, that's one of the smartest guys I know. Like, in the moment, the dumb guy became, because, so when it comes to that idea of transparency and authenticity, here's the struggle. This is real. And you know what? I get challenged with this too. But you know what? There's a brighter way to this. And I'm telling you, how long have you been married? 22, 23 years?
23, yeah.
23 years. Look, you don't stay married for 23 years unless you know how to, like, I mean, I'm going to say this and then I'm going to pitch it back to you, because this truly is your interview. Yeah. You have, in a relationship, right? You have a husband who's going like this. I'm just talking about a traditional man, woman. You have a wife who's also doing this. You have kids who are doing that. And you have a world that's doing that. And all of those lines are crossing each other at the same time. We're in a complicated place, right? And so sometimes both of your lines go down at the same time the world's lines go down. And then both you blame each other. And then you come back up and you realize you were wrong about that. But that's what I'm saying. Like, sometimes life is hard, but pull yourself and communicate yourself through that in such a way that you bring people back up to the place that you're eventually going to go.
Yeah. You know, right now in my practice, there's a pretty consistent set of themes, and here's what it is. It's through most of the summer, we all had a next, and next was back to school. Like, once we get back to school, then we're going to figure it out. And then on the other side of next, there's nothing, right? Like, there's nothing really like you can kind of count on. And so people are really struggling. And I've heard this so many times over the last couple of weeks, which is, I can't do this and I can't do that and I can't go to a movie and I can't. And I'm like, okay, stop. The people who survive this thing, they're not going to be talking about what they can't do. they're going to be talking about what they can do. And they're going to be creating things that they can do, whether it's in their business or in their homes or in their, in their backyards. Like, we need to be a people who are going to, generate ideas versus just kind of go, oh, I can't. But I want to say one more thing. I want to go back to this piece about repair and how you said Disneyland. Have you heard this piece? I don't know if it's for real or an urban legend, but it's definitely been my lived experience, which is if you go to Disneyland and you have a perfect day, they did exit interviews. People would come out and they would rate their day like an 8 or a 9. They would be like, yeah, that was amazing. I'd give it an 8 or 9. But if you go to Disneyland and something goes wrong and Disneyland fixes it the way that Disney is prone to do, like kind of over function in their repair, you will rate your day a 9 or a 10. Because it's not based on perfection. It's based on correction and repair. And I think that's the authenticity that people need to be tapping into, which is not, I got to be perfect. It's, I got to be human. And when I'm human, I can repair in a way that's also human and actually deepens the connection that the two of us have with one another, or the business has with the customer, or whatever.
It's such a cool, I believe that. Someone once told me, I've not seen this. We go to Disney a lot too. Someone once told me that Disney has people that just walk around looking for problems to solve. Like the kid drops the ice cream on the street, starts crying, and 30 seconds later, there's another ice cream that appears. And now it's like this magic Disney moment, but because people were watching,
Yeah, we lost a paper ticket. So we had a family of 4, big old trip. I was responsible. We had, all of a sudden we only had 3 tickets. And we were like, and they were like, don't worry about it. Here's your free ticket. Like, here's your ticket to the park. And I was like, you're kidding me. Like, they could have made that so problematic, but now I'm like in love. I'm like, sure. Yeah. You bet. Disney. I'm pro Disney.
So Michael Eisner, the former CEO of Disney, was criticized pretty heavily in the media. It was about 10, 12 years ago, because he fired somebody who he said didn't have, the person essentially wasn't Disney. And I basically read that to read the person had a bad attitude about life. You know what I mean? And I get it. I get why he did that. And I thought, man, that's what you should do. Like, if somebody doesn't represent my company, every time someone calls, they're all angry or something like that, they're going to move on. And I just find that leadership, it's very against the tide as it is right now, but it's actually, you're trying to create just this incredible experience. So back to your business, how do you create that, you have these people who come to you with this brokenness, which is inherent in all of us, and your job is to be Disneyland for their marriage.
I disagree. No, I don't want to be Disneyland for their marriage at all. I want to be a mirror. I want to hold up a mirror and be brutally honest and compassionate with what I can see. I'll tell my clients apologize to me a lot. They're like, "Oh, I'm sorry if that's not what you wanted to hear," or "I'm sorry if that hurt your feelings." And I'll say this in the kindest way. I'll go, "You guys, you can't hurt my feelings.
Yeah.
Like, I don't care about you enough to let you hurt my feelings. Like, I care about what you care about, and I want to be of help to you, but we're not friends. Like, that's not my job. My job is to provide a service for you. And I'm just really, really clear about it. And because I'm clear about it, we can do the work now, right? Like, I'm fortunate too that I'm busy enough in my practice that I don't have to keep clients on the hook.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I'm not trying to make them therapy dependent. In fact, I want them to be the opposite. And I found out about myself that like I said, I didn't have the drama gene. And when I found out about that, and I gave myself permission to be a little bit sandpapery or a little bit salty, my business took off because I wasn't channeling any energy into the sales process. I was just here's what it is,
Well, as as a therapist, and I'll just say this as a business owner, and by the way, in a moment, I want to talk about entrepreneurs in business. If you just joined us, by the way, my name's Ed Rush. This is my bud, Zack Brittle. We've known each other for almost 30 years. Zack's a marriage and family therapist, big teacher in that space as well. Has a big show he does with Vanity Fair. We're talking about how to be authentic and some good comments, by the way. What's up, Jeff? Good to see you. Welcome to the show. Hey, Scott, my man, Scott Zimmerman. From all the way down in Florida. I love it. So he says, tell them what they hear, not what they want to hear. So on to what you just said. So I mentioned the fact that I've had, I think it's now 3 different pastors who I've essentially been able to mentor. And I will tell you that most of the time, and this is true for speakers, authors, coaches, it's not just pastors. Most of the time, when a pastor walks up to give his sermon on a Sunday morning, what he's saying subliminally to the people listening is he's saying, hey, do you guys like me? Do you think I'm funny? Do you like my stories? Are you interested in me? And I've worked with enough people now that I can actually see it. Like as soon as somebody starts speaking, I'm like, all right, this is one of those guys who's asking, I call that asking the question. You're asking the audience a question about you. It's rare, but when you see somebody who's communicating so authentically that you can tell that they're not wanting anything from the people they're communicating to. They're truly in a place of service. They're actually giving. And I think what you said about your practice is really true, which is a lot of times people in business, in therapy, as entrepreneurs are saying to their market, hey, what do you think about me? Do you think that what I'm saying is good? Do you like me? And what happens is, number one, you get less of an effect on the people that you're working with, truly, because it's about you. But the second thing is it makes you massively, massively vulnerable to criticism. Because if somebody does criticize you, oh my gosh, it like changes your entire world. And I think what you just said about the way that you do therapy is clever, which is the couple who's coming to you is not the scorecard on how you're doing. You're your own scorecard. You're the one to be able to help them, right?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I was thinking about, I mean, I definitely, there's one thing you can do that will hurt my feelings. And that's be mean to me. If you're mean to
not
me,
pay you.
Yeah. Well, not even that. Like sometimes I'm like, fine, I don't want to like, fine, bye. But I have people who like, when they're say exiting therapy, they'll send me an email about how terrible I was. And I'm just like, why did you could just not come back.
Yeah. Right.
You don't tell me how terrible I am. And so, but other than that, I feel like it's that my ability to stay neutral is the way I can serve them the best, you know? And so I'm just really kind of unapologetic about that. And
so I want to get to a question that I've just been dying to ask you.
Okay.
So let me set the context. So I've worked one-on-one with, I think it's a little over 460 now, one-on-one coaching consulting clients. Of the 460, now, by the way, that doesn't include events, that doesn't include live streams. These are like one-on-one clients, right? Of the 460, probably about 150 have been married couples in business together, where they're both working in the business. So for example, I wouldn't be one of those examples. I run my business, I do everything in my business. My wife teaches my kids, and we have very clear roles, but the business is the business and she's not involved in the, so I wouldn't be an example of that. And maybe you wouldn't be either. I don't think your wife is involved in your business. So take the 150 couples in business that actually came in and they both work together in business. Of the 150, I probably have, I can count on less than 2 of my hands the number that did it well. That's an astronomically low number.
Yeah.
I have some ideas on why they did it well, but what are your thoughts for couples in business? I mean, look, it's hard enough when you got your own thing and then you come home, but when you're doing your thing together and then you're home, how do you encourage people to make that work?
Yeah, I mean, the thing that you noted about your household is that the roles are really clear, right? And the reason that couples that are in business together have challenges is because the roles are really muddy. And I agree with you. I think it's astronomically low that couples can sort of figure out how to do that really, really well. And I'd actually like to hear about what you found in common of the 6 or 7 that were getting it right. But the reason that a lot of those relationships are in trouble is because they don't know how to be husband and wife.
Yeah.
And I think that they need to learn how to take off, let's say they're on a farm together. They need to take off their farmer hat and their overalls and kind of do like a Mr. Rogers thing, right? I come home, I take off my sweater, I put on my slippers, I stop being whatever Mr. Rogers is outside, and now I start being this person in here, your friend, your neighbor. And I think, couples that can't do that, particularly when inside the business there is a hierarchy, like they're not partners, then the one who is higher often wreaks havoc in the home too, because he or she can't sort of check out of the bit. So it's really challenging for people who are in business together to try and figure out how to make that work.
I've seen the 2 things that I think make it work. Again, this is from a lot of seeing it a lot. Number 1, if a couple is going to work together entrepreneurially, the successful ones I know have very clear lanes.
Yeah.
She does the website and the online marketing and the ads, and he creates the content and teaches. Or the other way around. I see that happen quite a bit the other way around too. And the second thing is, so I get this a lot in coaching days where the person will say, so Ed, what do you think about this? And I'll go, well, you can do it this way, or here's what I recommend. And I'll do the whole thing and I'll say, this is how I would do it. And then the person goes, I told you so. See, I told you. He didn't want to listen to me, but when we came here, you said the thing I've been saying for a year, and he listens to you. Like, that's if they're going to like talk over each other in their specific area and then have to be right. The couples that I know that would do really well, they both give up a sense of being right because what they want is the result. In other words, hey, they can come to it with different ideas, but fundamentally they want the thing that's going to work best. And together they're both happy that they got to the thing that works best, not the thing that works best that proved that they were right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So it's those 2 things. One, they need clearly defined lanes. And I mean that when I say clearly defined. What's that?
They need clearly defined lanes inside the business, and then they need a clear clock out to clearly clock out.
That's exactly right. And so what I would do with my clients who are married is I would say, okay, first of all, Sunday's off. No work, no email, and you can't talk about work. I don't care if something comes up, you do it on Monday. And literally you clean off a day, completely clean with no talk. It's almost impossible for them to do this, by the way, but it's a great challenge. And then you also have clean line times, like 5 o'clock at night. We're done. Because the lines get really blurred in entrepreneurial relationships. And it gets very difficult because those lines, and they end up basically, what ends up happening is they end up working all the time.
Yeah. So. Well, and I think too, like, I mean, one of the, you said 5 o'clock is done. So that's time boxing, but you can also space box, right? Like you can say at the kitchen table, we don't
have sex.
We don't have sex. We don't use our phones. We don't talk about work. Or in this living room, this living room is a work zone, like time and space help us make sense of the world. So, and that's why everybody's having a hard time with no next, right? Because it's hard to figure out like how to measure time right now.
Well, gosh, that's another. Let's talk about that.
Okay.
And by the way, I want to do any questions you have as you're watching. I know I've got one question from Scott, which I really like your question, Scott. So I'm gonna ask this. It has to do with our country, but before I do that, this is I want your thought on this as not only as a therapist, but you're a person who sees the world through a lens that's, I think, fairly accurate. But part of the issue, I think, is most people, especially entrepreneurs, I believe, have an excessive and almost idolatrous, frankly, in its excess, obsession about their future self, to the point at which the belief system is, my present self is insufficient, but man, you should see me 5 years from now. Or in other words, the idea is in my future, I'm amazing. I'm not there yet, but I'm amazing. And part of the entrepreneurial journey, in my opinion, frankly, I think part of the emotional maturity journey is understanding the like glory of your messed up you now is also the glory of your messed up you like 5 years from now, you know, and being really comfortable. So I think people have are having a particular issue right now, because if you idolize, take the country, part of the dysfunction in our country is the like obsession about, man, in 5 years, this is going to be amazing when we're finally in, you know what I mean? And you know what? It's not going to be amazing. It's going to maybe be like a little better. And then it'll get like a little, you know what I mean? But like, it's not going to be utopia, because we don't get to create utopia on earth. We get to do that in heaven, you know?
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts on that as far as like people in terms of how they think?
Yeah. So is this us answering Scott's question? Is that what you're asking?
Well, maybe let's put them together. So Scott's question says, he just hits you on the chin with this question. Watch this.
Yeah.
Boom. I get curious about the country. How can we create a shift that helps our country back from its divide? How can we invite people out of their bias? How do we return to productive discourse? And it really, it's the same question. One is on an individual level, one's on a national level. And my thesis is, we have this idea that our future is so much better than our present, to the point at which we despise the present and essentially make an idol out of the future. Your thoughts?
Well, two things. One is I don't really know how to create this shift. I can tell you how I tried to do it. Actually a couple weeks ago, I got into a Twitter fight with a lady, like a famous lady, a blue check lady who like has lots of followers. And I said, hey, I'd like to talk to you about this topic that you're talking about. Can we do that? And she wasn't interested, got mad at me, and we went back and forth for a second. I go, listen, literally, I'm not asking you. I just want to know if we can have a talk about it. And I think that's, and ultimately we weren't able to. And so I just kind of opted out. But I think, Scott, to answer your question, the first thing we need to do is ask for the conversation. We need to say, can we do this with kindness? Can we do this with care? Because that has to be the beginning. Like we can't just jump into a Twitter conversation with this lady and expect there to be a meaningful dialogue. We have to get permission first. We have to get consent, which I think is actually the same thing in your house, in your relationship. One of I have 3 favorite questions that I propose to couples. And one of them is now a good time? Like when you walk into the kitchen and you got something on your mind because you're upset about the grocery bill, you can say, is now a good time? Because I want to talk about
oh, that's really good.
I want to talk about something, and I want to make sure your head is in the right place, or that you're not still thinking about work, or
That's good, dude.
So that's essentially what I think we need to be doing with in the country where there's disagreement, to be able to look across call it the aisle or the table or the Twitter sphere, and say, hey, is now a good time for us to have this dialogue? Because that's the only way we're going to chip away at this kind of really, especially politically polarized sides of the
very good
sides of the equation. Yeah.
What are the other questions? Wait, I mean, this is classic. See, Zack's like, I'm not really like a marketer, and then he's like, so there's 3 questions I ask, and here's one. So you don't have to tell the other, but you should.
Well, another one is I think couples get into trouble because they stop being curious about one another. And so one of my favorite questions is, who was your best friend in 4th grade? Because I don't know when the last time, Ed, you thought about your best friend in 4th grade, but I don't think about him very often. But when I do, I get to start telling stories that I know my wife has never heard. Like,
Billy Cadell.
Oh yeah. And like, what did you and Billy do?
Yeah.
What did you do?
Went to school together, hung out, played
Build
football.
Forts? Did you build forts? Did you like throw pennies at trains? I mean, I think it's just like, we need to get back into just generating conversation that we've never had before, because I think we get into like ruts, right? We get into kids, work, soccer practice, budget, all this other stuff. And shoot, the third one is not coming up to.
It's okay. There's a link below. I want you to tell everybody about this really quickly. So this is edrush.com/ZACH.
Yep.
That redirects you over to this page. Let me pull it up real quick. You've got a 4-week course here. So give the overview on this really quickly.
Yeah.
It's
so
insanely inexpensive, by the way.
Yeah.
So
I wrote the marriage therapy journal because my clients weren't doing their homework. And so what it is, it's a book with about 8 sessions that are kind of summaries of my first 8 sessions, or my most consistent 8 sessions. And so then I got contacted by this company called High Tide. They run virtual book clubs. They've got tons and tons of books. And they are doing a virtual book club in the month of October. So between now and the end of September, you can register, and then they'll kind of walk you through the process of the marriage therapy journal. And then there's a couple of Q&A sessions with me. They've got a lot of supplementary material. It's a really cool program. And I'm excited about being a part of it. So yeah, that's
it's $40, dude. All right, so go there and get involved with Zack's. I might do this, buddy.
Yeah, you should.
I might do this. I already told you everything's perfect.
Yeah. Yeah, you've got it together, man. You're an expert.
We were talking about that before the show because I said, for example, you give me copywriting. I think I've got 7 or 8 7-figure promotions I've written. So I truly do consider myself an expert by the proof that I've got, that I know what I'm doing. But marriage, I don't think you can ever say, like, at some point, you can't be like, yeah, I'm an expert at this. He's like, the moment you say I'm an expert at this, all the rules change and like the sand shifts, and now you're not again. Yeah. So, it's interesting the way that works. So,
well, I'll own that I'm an expert in the same way that Home Depot owns that they have collected. They've made their business about providing tools, right? And so that's just the privilege I've had after working in this field for as long as I have, and with as many different couples as I have. So,
interesting comment. So Melanie McFadden says Billy Cadell is the most amazing friend to have in your corner. She's from Philly, which is where I grew up too. And the interesting thing, so the interesting thing about your question, I'm gonna just say this, then I'm gonna let you wrap it up, because sometimes as a advisor, consultant, therapist, author, speaker, or coach, the best breakthrough you can have with somebody is asking a really good question, not giving them the answer to your question. So I'm going to give you a little longer version of this question that you asked. You said, who is your best friend in 4th grade? Billy Cadell. I met Billy Cadell in 3rd grade. We actually had an argument and then a fight, and then we became best friends, which is kind of the way that it works. Billy Cadell was a Black kid that grew up in West Philadelphia. I was growing up in the suburbs. At the time, truly, I did not know the difference between any race. It was not something that was even categorically, I never thought about it. In a really good way. I mean that in a very innocent growing up way. Neither one of my parents had any racism at all, and I didn't know. So when I became friends with Billy, I didn't understand that was a thing. Like, I didn't understand. And so what I used to do was I had lunch we had 4 kid lunch tables, and I always had lunch at a table with Billy and a few of his friends, and it was me. It was basically me, little white guy, at a table with 3 black kids. And it took a year before one of the other kids, and this was a school that was right near West Philadelphia and South Philadelphia. And South Philadelphia is very Italian. West Philadelphia is completely different ethnically. And one of the kids said something about the fact that I was sitting there with all these other kids that weren't my color. And it was the first time, I kid you not, I'm talking like 4th grade. It was the first time I actually noticed, like, it wasn't like it was a bad thing. I just noticed it. And so I think about my relationship with him, because we were very, very good friends all the way in through high school. And I think about my relationship with him, and I think about my kids, because my kids are growing up that way too. If it wasn't for the news, my kids wouldn't know, like, oh, they're different. And so it's like, we're all kind of like just these human beings. And so I always think about that in relation to our struggles we have as a nation regarding race. Because I remember, absent of any sort of indoctrination or training, a child will truly grow up thinking that's a human being and that's about it. And the moment you begin to explain to them about races and like discrimination, all of a sudden it becomes a category But outside of that training, the natural human instinct is that's a human being who I love. And it's just fascinating when you look at it that way. So there's a longer story there.
Right on. Yeah. Well, and that's it. Right? Like, and now we're just talking. Might as well be having cheese fries and lemonade. We're just talking about, what it used to be like and what it could be like for our kids. And that's a cool conversation to have.
It's really interesting. All right. We're out of time.
Here's the third question. I remembered it.
Yeah.
The best question I think that you can ask your spouse is, what do you think?
Yeah.
Like, what do you think? Because I know what I think, but I'd really like to know what you think. So is now a good time? What do you think? Who was your best friend in 4th grade?
So I heard someone say this. I can't remember who said it. They said, my goal in my discussion with my wife is to say, so what I hear you saying is, and then to essentially summarize what she's saying. And he goes, my goal is to do that until she says exactly. And when I told my wife that, she's like, that's right. That's what so
exactly
anyway.
Is what she said.
Exactly. That's exactly it. Yeah. So what I hear you saying is, and say it enough times until she says exactly. Anyway. Yeah. So I agree with you, Jeff. I used to hear that it's good not to see color and that it's great for kids. As adults, we need to see color so we can see patterns of injustice. Well, also, so that we can see the distinction one of my clients is a pastor of one of the biggest all black churches in Maryland. And she said to me, I don't want people to be colorblind because we have a great culture and a distinctiveness of our culture that I would like to be celebrated. I thought, man, she's right about that. Like, why wouldn't you want to take away the truly distinctive nature of some of the cultures and races and food choices and so anyway, all right, buddy, we're running out of time, so give us a quick wrap up, and then in the meantime go to edrush.com/Zack and check out what Zack's doing. What are your last thoughts, buddy?
Gosh, if it's around authenticity, I think it's just you do you. Like, just embrace the things that you're good at and let that be a gift to your client, your customer, your partner, your spouse, because the more we try to adapt on their behalf, I think the more we let them down.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. All right, everybody, say thank you in chat. My man, Zack Brittle, cheese fries and lemonade. Actually, last time it was cheese fries and beer.
It was.
I think last time we was up in Seattle.
Yeah.
So thanks for joining me on the show, dude. Stick around for a minute so we can say goodbye and chat. Another great show. Please reach out to Zack and say hello. EdTalks Live is out.